gone wrong. And if you're watching this on your phone, hit that hype button to show some love for this crazy story you're about to hear. The whole thing started when Michael Douglas walked onto the View set that morning, expecting to promote his latest project. He'd done hundreds of these interviews before, smooth as silk, charming the hosts and audiences alike. But something was different this time. Joy Behar had that look in her eyes, the one that regular viewers know means trouble is brewing. "So, Michael," Joy began, barely waiting for him to get comfortable in his chair, "let's talk about your new movie. But first, I have to ask about something that's been bothering me. You've been in this industry for decades, making millions while regular people struggle to pay their bills. How do you justify that kind of wealth inequality?" Michael's eyebrows shot up. This wasn't exactly the softball question he was expecting to kick things off. "Well, Joy, I think that's a pretty loaded way to start our conversation," he replied with a diplomatic smile. "I've worked hard for everything I've achieved, just like anyone else in any profession." "Worked hard?" Joy shot back, her voice already taking on that confrontational edge her critics know so well. "You mean you worked hard being born into privilege? Your father was Kirk Douglas, for crying out loud. Some of us actually had to claw our way up from nothing." The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was supposed to be a light promotional segment, not a class warfare discussion. Michael's publicist, standing just off camera, looked like she wanted to crawl under a rock. "Joy, I think you're being unfair here," Michael said, his famous composure starting to crack just slightly. "Yes, my father was successful, but that doesn't diminish the work I've put in over the past 50 years. I've earned my place in this industry." "Earned your place?" Joy let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the studio. "Please. You had doors open for you that the rest of us could only dream of walking through. And now you sit there in your $1,000 suit talking about hard work to people who can barely afford to keep their lights on." Whoopi Goldberg tried to jump in with a diplomatic redirect. "Joy, maybe we should focus on Michael's new film." But Joy wasn't having it. She held up her hand to silence Whoopi and kept her laser focus on Michael. "No, I think this is important. These celebrities come on our show acting like they're just regular people when they live in a completely different world. Michael, when was the last time you pumped your own gas? When was the last time you worried about whether you could afford groceries?" Michael's jaw tightened. You could see the frustration building behind his eyes. "Joy, I don't think attacking me personally is productive here. I came on your show as a courtesy to talk about a project I'm passionate about." "A courtesy?" Joy's voice rose an octave. "You came here to sell tickets to your movie and make yourself even richer. Don't pretend this is some kind of favor to us." The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah Haynes looked mortified. Sunny Hostin was frantically checking her notes, trying to find a way to change the subject, and the audience sat in stunned silence. This was live television at its most uncomfortable. "You know what, Joy?" Michael said, his voice getting colder by the second. "I've been doing interviews for decades, and I've never encountered such unprofessional behavior from a host. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here?" Joy leaned forward in her chair, clearly relishing the confrontation. "I'm trying to get some honesty from someone who's spent his whole career pretending to be something he's not. You play these working-class heroes on screen, but in real life, you're just another entitled Hollywood elite who's completely out of touch with reality." That's when something shifted in Michael's expression. The diplomatic mask he'd been wearing started to slip, and you could see the real anger beginning to surface. "You want honesty, Joy?" Michael said, his voice dropping to a dangerously low register. "Here's some honesty for you. I've sat through thousands of interviews in my career with journalists who actually knew how to do their job. What you're doing right now isn't journalism, it's a hit job disguised as an interview." Joy's eyes lit up with satisfaction. She was getting exactly the reaction she wanted. "Oh, so now I don't know how to do my job? That's rich coming from someone who's never had to work a real day in his life." "A real day?" Michael's laugh was harsh and humorless. "Lady, I've been working since I was in my 20s. I've produced films, I've built businesses, I've created jobs for hundreds of people. What exactly have you contributed to society besides sitting behind this desk throwing stones at people who've actually accomplished something?" The other hosts were now openly staring in shock. No guest had ever spoken to Joy like this on live television. The production crew behind the cameras were frantically gesturing, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue. Joy's face flushed red with indignation. How dare you question my contributions? I've been a working comedian and television host for decades. I've earned everything I have without Daddy's help. Working comedian? Michael shot back, his composure completely abandoned now. Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're using your platform to bully guests who can't fight back. Well, guess what, Joy? I'm not intimidated by you. Whoopi tried again to regain control. Okay, let's all take a breath here. No, Whoopi, Michael said, turning to face her. I'm sorry, but your colleague here has been completely out of line from the moment I sat down. This isn't an interview, it's an ambush. Joy wasn't backing down. If anything, she was doubling down. An ambush? All I did was ask you some tough questions about your privilege. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Tough questions? Michael's voice was rising now, matching Joy's volume. You didn't ask me about my work, my craft, or anything relevant to why I'm here. You immediately launched into some personal attack about my background. That's not tough questioning, that's just bad manners. Bad manners? Joy scoffed. You want to talk about bad manners? How about the bad manners of hoarding wealth while people are homeless on the streets? How about the bad manners of living in a bubble while lecturing the rest of us about social responsibility through your movies? The camera operators were zooming in, capturing every micro-expression as this confrontation intensified. You could see the sweat beating on Michael's forehead, the vein pulsing in Joy's temple. This wasn't television anymore. This was a real fight happening in front of millions of viewers. You know what, Joy? Michael said, his voice getting steadier but somehow more menacing. Let's talk about bubbles. You sit here every day in your comfortable studio, making millions of dollars yourself, and you have the audacity to lecture me about being out of touch? When was the last time you took a subway? When was the last time you shopped at a regular grocery store instead of having everything delivered to your penthouse? Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She clearly hadn't expected Michael to turn the tables on her so effectively. That's different, she finally managed to sputter. I didn't inherit my career from my famous father. No, you just inherited your spot on this show because you were willing to say whatever controversial thing would get ratings. Michael fired back. At least I create something. My movies, my productions, they employ thousands of people. They tell stories that matter to people. What do you create, Joy? Besides division and negativity? The audience was completely silent now, watching this unprecedented meltdown unfold in real time. You could hear a pin drop in that studio. Even the camera crew had stopped their usual shuffling around to watch this disaster in real time. Michael stood up from his chair, something that never happens during a live taping. The action sent a visible shockwave through the other hosts. You know what your problem is, Joy? He said, pointing directly at her. You're bitter. You're sitting there taking out your frustrations on someone who's actually built something with their life? You want to talk about social responsibility? How about the responsibility of a talk show host to treat their guests with basic respect? Joy shot up from her chair too, clearly not wanting to let Michael have the physical advantage. The sight of both of them standing and facing off like prize fighters was surreal in the context of daytime television. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Michael Douglas, she snarled. I don't need life lessons from someone who's never faced a real challenge in his pampered existence. Pampered existence? Michael's voice cracked with disbelief and rage. I've battled throat cancer that nearly killed me. I've gone through public divorces that were splashed across every tabloid in the world. I've had to rebuild my career multiple times when people wrote me off. I've dealt with addiction issues in my family that would break most people, but you wouldn't know about any of that because you didn't bother to do any research before this interview. You just decided to attack me personally from minute one. Sarah Haynes looked like she was about to cry. Sunny Hostin was frantically scribbling notes, probably trying to figure out how to salvage this situation. This was supposed to be a feel-good morning show segment, and instead they were witnessing what looked like the end of Michael Douglas's relationship with daytime television forever. Joy wasn't giving an inch. If anything, she seemed energized by the conflict. Oh, boo-hoo. You had some personal problems while living in mansions and flying on private jets. Cry me a river, Michael. Some of us have real problems. Real problems? Michael's voice was now loud enough that people in the hallway could probably hear him. You think because I have money that somehow invalidates everything I've been through? You think wealth is some kind of magical shield against pain and suffering? That's the most ignorant thing I've heard yet, and that's saying something after this conversation. The producers in the control room were having heated discussions about whether to cut to commercial. You could see them through the glass partition, gesturing wildly and pointing at monitors. But the train wreck was too compelling to stop now. Joy crossed her arms and smirked. Look at you, getting all worked up because someone finally called you out on your privilege. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle any criticism because you've been surrounded by yes men your whole life. Yes men? Michael laughed bitterly. Lady, I work in Hollywood. Trust me, there's no shortage of people willing to tell you exactly what they think of you. The difference is, most of them have the professional courtesy to wait until you're not a guest on their show. Professional courtesy? Joy's voice hit a shrill note. What about the professional courtesy of acknowledging your advantages instead of pretending you're some self-made man? What about the professional courtesy of not lying to our audience about what it's really like to be wealthy in America? I never lied about anything, Michael shot back. You're the one who's been lying since this interview started. You're pretending this is about social justice, when really, it's just about you wanting to tear someone down to make yourself feel better. That's when Michael completely lost it. You know what, Joy? Michael's voice erupted like a volcano that had been building pressure for decades. I'm done. I'm absolutely done with this charade. You want to know about real problems? Let me tell you about real problems. You sit here every single day spewing hatred and negativity into the world, poisoning discourse, dividing people, and you have the unmitigated gall to lecture me about privilege? Joy's smirk faltered for the first time since the interview began. She clearly hadn't expected Michael to go completely nuclear on live television. You think you're some kind of champion of the people? Michael continued, his voice booming through the studio. You're nothing but a professional antagonist who's built a career on tearing other people down. You don't create anything, you don't build anything, you don't inspire anyone. You just sit there like a vulture feeding off controversy and conflict. How dare you? Joy started to interrupt, but Michael wasn't having it. No, he said, raising his hand. You've had your time to talk. Now it's my turn. You want to talk about earning things? I've been nominated for Academy Awards. I've won Golden Globes. I've produced films that have employed thousands of people and entertained millions. What have you done? What's your legacy going to be, Joy? That you were really good at making people uncomfortable? The studio was dead silent except for Michael's voice echoing off the walls. Even the cameramen had stopped moving, mesmerized by this unprecedented destruction happening in real time. Joy tried to regain her footing. You think your little awards make you special? You think because Hollywood patted you on the head a few times, that gives you the right to? The right to what? Michael exploded, taking a step closer to the table. The right to expect basic human decency from a television host? The right to promote my work without being subjected to a political interrogation? Yes, Joy, I think I have those rights. Every guest on every show has those rights. Whoopi was frantically trying to signal the producers to cut to commercial, but they seemed frozen by the spectacle unfolding before them. This was television gold, even if it was destroying relationships and reputations in real time. You know what your real problem is? Michael continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper that somehow carried more menace than his shouting. You're jealous. You're sitting there seething with envy because other people have accomplished things you never could. You're bitter because despite all your years in television, despite all your supposed hard work, you'll never be remembered for anything positive. You'll just be remembered as the woman who was mean to people for no reason. Joy's face was now bright red. Whether from anger or embarrassment, it was impossible to tell. You don't know what you're talking about? She stammered. I've worked harder than you ever have in your privileged life. Worked harder? Michael's laugh was cold and cutting. At what? At being unpleasant? At making people feel unwelcome? Because if that's work, then yes, you're definitely the hardest worker in America. Sarah Haynes finally found her voice. Maybe we should all just take a step back and... No, Sarah, Michael said, turning to address her directly. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this needed to happen. Someone needed to call out this behavior. How many guests have sat in this chair and been subjected to this kind of treatment? How many people have walked away from this show feeling attacked and diminished? Joy was scrambling now, trying to regain control of the situation. You're having a complete meltdown on national television, Michael. This is exactly the kind of entitled behavior I was talking about. Entitled? Michael's voice reached a crescendo that made everyone in the studio flinch. You think standing up for myself is entitled? You think refusing to be your punching bag is entitled? Let me tell you what entitled is, Joy. Entitled is thinking you can treat people however you want because you have a microphone. Entitled is believing that your bitterness and cynicism somehow make you morally superior to everyone else. The other hosts were now openly panicking. Sunny Hostin was looking at her cards like they might contain some magical solution to this disaster. Whoopi was shaking her head in disbelief. This had gone beyond awkward television into the realm of genuine human conflict. You want to know the truth about privilege, Joy? Michael continued, showing no signs of slowing down. The truth is, you're the privileged one. You have a platform that reaches millions of people every day, and instead of using it to bring people together, to inspire them, to make their lives better, you use it to spread misery. That's not just privilege, that's privilege abuse. Joy made one last desperate attempt to turn the tables. Oh, so now I'm the villain because I asked you some tough questions? Because I didn't kiss your ring like everyone else does? Tough questions? Michael's voice cracked with incredulous laughter. You didn't ask me tough questions, Joy. You launched personal attacks. You made assumptions about my character. You tried to diminish my accomplishments. That's not journalism. That's just cruelty disguised as social commentary. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of traffic outside, the nervous breathing of everyone in the studio. This wasn't just a heated exchange anymore. This was a public execution of Joy's credibility as a professional interviewer. Michael looked around at all the hosts, then directly into the camera. You know what? I came here today to talk about a project I'm passionate about, something I thought your viewers might enjoy. Instead, I've been subjected to an interrogation about my personal life and my family background. That's not entertainment. That's not informative. It's just mean-spirited. He started walking toward the edge of the set, clearly preparing to leave. I've been in this business for 50 years, and I've never encountered such unprofessional behavior from a host. Never. Joy made one final, desperate play. So, you're just going to run away when things get a little heated? That's very mature, Michael. Michael stopped dead in his tracks and slowly turned around. The look on his face could have melted steel. Run away? Lady, I've faced down studio executives, battled cancer, survived public scandals, and rebuilt my career multiple times. You think a bitter talk show host is going to make me run away? He walked back toward the table, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually get physical. The security guards visible at the edge of the frame tensed up, ready to intervene if necessary. Here's what's going to happen, Michael said, his voice now eerily calm. I'm going to walk out of here with my dignity intact. You're going to sit there and think about how you treated a guest who came here in good faith. And hopefully, just hopefully, you'll realize that being controversial isn't the same thing as being interesting, and being confrontational isn't the same thing as being brave. With that, he turned and walked off the set, leaving the host sitting in stunned silence. The camera lingered on Joy's face for a moment, capturing an expression that was part shock, part anger, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny